Hello? Eldorado suggests abundance, prosperity, and often an easy life, to the point that it has become an expression in several languages, used nowadays to describe places that are pleasant to live in, where the economy is doing particularly well. However, and above all, it is a term that comes from Spanish, since Eldorado simply means the golden one. Some of you, when you hear Eldorado, might think of the images from the DreamWorks animated film of the same name. Others, more versed in history, link it to a legendary gold-covered city or a gold-rich region in South America. In fact, Eldorado and its modern use in our expressions truly come from these legends dating back to the era of European colonization of South America. And as we'll explore with Ben from History on the Map, who joins me today, could Eldorado have actually existed? Many related items are now in the Museo del Oro, the gold museum I visited a few years ago in Bogota, Colombia. However, this Eldorado isn't the legendary one, and while reality may be less flashy, it's just as exotic. So, Eldorado, the real one, what is it? Was it a city of gold or indigenous practices? And why has this term become so commonly used today? It all begins in the 16th century when the Spanish arrive in Mexico, Central America, and seize the treasure of Aztec Emperor Moctezuma. The treasure suggests a land rich in metals and jewels, leading them to follow this clue. In fact, it is during the various expeditions of Spanish conquistadors. For clarity, conquistador is a Spanish term meaning conqueror, and in practice refers both to an explorer and the leader of an armed expedition. During Spanish and Portuguese colonization of the Americas, it is therefore during these expeditions, through their discoveries and their encounters with local populations, that the conviction quickly arose that somewhere in this vast territory there was a land overflowing with riches. The legend solidified during the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro's expeditions. In 1533, he received the treasure of the Inca Empire as the ransom for the Inca emperor. He managed to capture him during a meeting that was supposed to be peaceful. Historian Benassar says this great treasure inspired a more precise idea: Eldorado. A quick note, Inca comes from Quechua and means son of the sun, matching Andes legends about South America's main mountain range. This term was used to refer to the rulers as well as the ruling class of the Quechua, who are a people of the Andes. Before, it was a tent brand sold at Decathlon. Thus, eventually, during the development of what is called the Inca Empire, the title of the emperors was Sapa Inca, meaning main Inca, or therefore, main son of the sun, as you understood. Calling the inhabitants of this empire the Incas is like calling ancient Egyptians pharaohs, or the French presidents. It may seem a bit absurd, but it's still a common usage today. So I won't stray from it, so you can follow along easily, and with that, I'll hand it over to Ben from China.
The term Eldorado appeared as early as 1536 in the Quito region, now northern Ecuador in South America. At the origin of the expression, there was an indigenous military chief who wore impressive gold plates on his chest. He was reportedly part of an Inca Empire general's army. This episode is attested by a document from the archives of the Indies in Seville, in which Pizarro, having captured this chief, confirms the detention of the Indian Eldorado.
As a reminder, Europeans of the time still believed they had arrived in Asia, specifically in India, and not on a continent they didn't know existed. That's why Indian referred to indigenous people. At the same time, Pizarro's captains reported the story of a local chief from a tribe located in what is now Colombia. He coated himself in gold dust at some ceremonies. These stories were told to them by those they called, in quotes, the Indians. It was in Lake Guatavita that this gold-covered chief of the Muisca tribe would bathe, and into which the people would throw offerings such as jewels, jewelry, and objects made of silver and gold. Some of these items are at the Museo del Oro in Bogota, making it clearer how they may have inspired the Eldorado legend. In fact, the conquistador Antonio de Sepulveda, literally tried to drain this lake to retrieve the riches that had been thrown in. This has since left a large scar in the hill next to the lake, as you can see in the image. This likely resulted from the meeting of these two real Eldorados, the Inca officer and the Muisca chief. Inflated by rumors, the legend of Eldorado, a land of riches, takes shape. Although, as you have understood, it draws its roots from the context of the time, without which the legend simply would not have gained such magnitude. Still, in northern South America's viceroyalty of New Granada, covering all or part of today's Colombia and Venezuela, the Spanish finally think they'll find this famous region.
But it will be a disappointment because even though there is gold which will indeed be exploited, it is far from being extraordinarily abundant. On the other hand, there is another metal that is present in abundance, silver, and that, quite logically, the Spaniards are delighted about. And it's this element that seems to keep the legend alive, which was faltering, because the amounts of gold actually found were more than disappointing. Gold isn't abundant, but silver is. And it's the abundance of this metal, this precious metal, a source of wealth that allows the legend to survive its first illusions.
However, despite many exploration expeditions after these discoveries, none found evidence supporting the existence of the legendary Eldorado as a city or region. A legend built by rumors and sustained by the discovery of abundant silver deposits. As you've realized, there are actually several Eldorados or golden ones, embodied both by different indigenous peoples of the South American continent, as well as by the wealthy native cultures of South America. Whether it was the Incas or other tribes that used gold in many of their practices, beautiful traces of which can still be found, and some of which are on display, as you know, at the Museo del Oro in Bogota. Combined with the earlier context, all these factors turned real Eldorados into legendary myths. Thank you for watching this mini documentary, and thanks to Ben from L'Histoire à la Carte for accepting my invitation. I invite you to see what he offers. If you don't know him yet, I've put a link in the description, and you'll also see a link appear on the screen. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, and we'll meet again in the comments, where you shouldn't hesitate to leave us a little muy bueno if you enjoyed it. See you very soon.